And we're live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed. Thomas, you well?
I'm very well. I'm very, very well. In fact, I'm going to tell you, I said to Tom Hector, who's one of your, I think he's number 1 or number 2 REB South Australia, and he's always up there. I said to him just before he got on, this is the fittest I've been in years, Phil. I've run the Bay Run 96 days in a row. 96 days in a row, 7 kilometers. Now, for a lot of people watching this, they'll say, yeah, well, 7 Ks, but I am 54 and I haven't been in good shape because of treatment. And on the 26th of June, Phil, I left Marsfield doing an auction for one agency for Alan Galeb. And I said to him, mate, I'm going to run the Bay Run for the next 14 days. I'm not going to let Gladys Berejiklian dictate my life, because I thought it was going to be a 2-week thing. Actually, I thought it was going to be 7 days, because she actually did say we might get out of after 7 days. So today was day 96. I'm going to day 100. And I've got to tell you, I found a guy that is a physio that was Ash Barty's physio. And what he does is he's keeping me going. He massages my legs and he puts needles in there. It's called needling. And what they do is they spasm. And I'll put on the comments here. Welcome to everyone, by the way. There's Alan now. Alan's come on. Yeah, there you go. By the way, great agent, Alan Galeb. He runs a thing, by the way, Phil, if you want to join it, called the Savlaki Boys. They run the Bay Run at 4:30 in the morning. Luke Moroney, good day everyone that's come on. Anyway, Phil, listen, enough bragging. I'm really, really fit, but I am also, Phil, I am really looking forward to October 18. I've had enough. I want shops to be open. I want to be able to go into the Athlete's Foot. I want to be able to go into a normal restaurant. How are you going?
I'm good, mate. But let's talk about the Bay Run really quickly. I know of the Bay Run. I've been around it. I'm not a runner. I'm a swimmer. But if you want to challenge yourself, why don't you try a harder run, mate? I don't think there's one hill on that thing. It's flat as a tack. Grandma and a Zimmer frame could get around that every day. What time? Okay. What's your time come down to?
Listen, I'm not proud of the time, Phil. I'll tell you the time.
Sharper. It doesn't matter what the time is. Is it got better?
It's around 45 minutes. It's got better. It obviously would get better, because you can't do the same thing for 96 days in a row and not have some sort of improvement. I'm doing it in 45 minutes. If I wanted to, I could push it to 40 minutes. But if I did push it to 40 minutes, I wouldn't be able to do it every day. So I'm intelligently now. Alex, is Alex there? You looked in the background, because Alex is a runner.
He's there. Tom does the Bay Run in 45 minutes. I reckon he's taking his time.
Okay, so Alex probably does it in 25 to 30. There he is. Alex, I've got to tell you, I'm not a runner, right? I've run it 96 days in a row. Now, if I run it fast, I'm convinced I won't be able to run it every day, because you'll end up doing a lot more work on your quads and your hammies and your glutes. So I'm sort of moving it at a pace where I'm using direction over speed is maybe the best way to describe it, heading in the right direction. How long does it take you to do it in, Alex? By the way, everyone, Alex is the business partner of Phil Tarrant. They're co-owners of Momentum Media and obviously REB. Lisa Novak said she's just finished an interview with REB. You interview all the good agents. How long do you do it in, Alex?
So, Tom, before I answer your question, just in talking about in terms of speed and doing runs, you've got to know why you want to do a run quickly. So if you want to do a fast run, rather than trying to run the same run quicker and quicker and quicker, day by day by day, you need to, if you really want to do it in a record speed, then you need to vary your training. It's the same for so many different things. So you've got to ask yourself the question, why do you want to do it quicker? Is it because you just want to beat a personal best? So if you want to go from 40 minutes to 42 minutes to 40 minutes to whatever, then you've got to, if it's really important to get a record time, then you do 5K runs quick, and then you do 15K runs slow, and then you come back and you do the run that you're looking to do, and you'll speed up your time on that.
Okay, so Yeah, I get it, but I got to tell you, Alex. Here's how I rationalize it in my head. If I do it in 45 and I'm happy, but I do it in 40 and I didn't enjoy it as much, I'm picking the 45.
This is the point, and it's a great thing. You know, you've got to ask yourself the question: why do I want to run it quicker? What is the benefit? Is it ticking off, you know, like a kind of a milestone? Is it just because I want to go and have a cup of tea earlier than what I would do if I do it in 45 minutes? You've got to understand the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And personally now, I've done the sit surf I got it down to 55 minutes when I was about 50 years old. So that was pretty quick. I couldn't do it in anything like that now. I'd be lucky to do it in 60, 65 minutes. But I don't want to run it that quick anymore. I want to enjoy my running. I want to get the benefits of feeling fit, enjoying, being outside in the environment, knowing I'm doing something good for my heart. And I want to enjoy the run, right? Rather than belting through and feeling stiff and tired and, like falling asleep afterwards, I want to enjoy the run. So you've got to look at, why do I want to do it? Why do I want to do it in a certain speed?
Very well. Now, before you leave, Alex, we were having a chat before we went online, and you mentioned the word mortgage stress. I mentioned the word fearless debt, and I think that they're actually being married to each other, because I think fearless debt is the precursor to mortgage stress. I've never seen it in my 34 years of real estate where you've got people that I would consider not to be high risk profile that are basically saying, man, just go another million on a property. Yet in recent days, there have been a few articles that have popped up talking about mortgage stress in, I think, Victoria, and more
rate rises 25 basis points, 25 basis points, 25 basis points, and a fairly tepid, property market. So for the same house is worth the same amount of value, I'm paying more and more and more each month as the RBA rises rates, and then the lenders then correspondingly rise their rate. So that's where the mortgage stress. So each month I get more stressed because for the same bricks and mortar, I'm paying more money out on it. So that's the mortgage stress type thing. The interesting thing is where we are now, Tom, is we are in we all know we're in a ludicrously low interest rate environment. It is phenomenally cheap to borrow money. And depending on your particular profile, it's actually very, very easy to borrow money. So if you're a simple borrower, you pay AYG, you've not got any sort of major debt, you've got a good income, you've got a deposit, the banks and the lenders will throw money at you. So the fearless element comes in from a number of angles, Tom. One of them is, my friend bought a place 6 months ago and now it's worth $700,000 more than it was when he bought it. So I now think, it's that greed element. The fear is tagged with an element of greed and not being able to foresee threats in the future. So I go, well, if my friend's done that, 6 months ago, then I'll do that now, because things are moving so fast. I don't have a fear of what might happen. I'm more concerned about what I might miss out on. So that's where the fearless element comes in. And I think you hit the nail on the head, that following the fearlessness will come the stress. And it's that realization that you've been swept along with a market that is going in one direction, that you've jumped on. And it's that real kind of almost self-loathing about your own decision-making, where you go, what was I doing? Why did I go 200,000 more at auction, $1 million more at auction? Why did I do that? So yeah, we're in unprecedented times.
Before you leave, and I'm going to put this to all the viewers and people that are listening to this on podcast afterwards. John McGrath always used the clock analogy to describe the market. 12 meaning that the market has boomed, right? 6 meaning the market has bottomed, right? I'd love to get all our viewers and listeners to put in the comments where they see the current market. Now, I want to ask you, Phil, where do you see where do you see it is? And I want to ask Alec, where do you see it is? So do you think that we're closer to the 12 or we're closer to the 6?
So this is John McGrath's metric. So 12 is it has boomed and it stopped booming, and 6
it's the high. It's the high. It's reached the peak of the market, and reached the peak of the market means that after it reached the peak, that it will have a slight correction.
Okay. On that basis, we've had a lot of growth, and we're seeing.
So this This guy's not very
11:30.
optimistic about the future. He reckons it's 11:30. He reckons it's 11:30.
Well, but we've seen the numbers come out from CoreLogic recently. Sydney prices in the last 12 months, 26% growth, 20% in Brisbane. I think Melbourne's sort of 15, 16%. So we've seen a lot of growth. So how much more growth is in the market at an absolute value? I reckon we've seen most of the growth. So I'd say you're probably at 10 o'clock. But you're still going to have a period of growth over the next couple of years. It's just not going to be at the same speed as what you've seen for the last 12 months. So we've had a lot of the growth, but there's still some to go. So 10 o'clock.
Okay. What do you think, Alex?
Because it's about supply and demand. And at the moment, there is just so little supply coming onto the marketplace. And so that just squeezes the prices. I think I'm not going to know where we're at until there is more supply on the marketplace. We're not going to know where we're at until, the borders have opened up. If I was to kind of pick a number, I would say we're probably approaching 9 o'clock because the ability to borrow is now being curbed to such a great degree that unless I've already made, a load of money in the first part of this cycle and I'm now looking to leverage up again, you're going to reach a point where you just can't get the funds to purchase. I know some guys who are sort of first-time buyers, who just haven't bought, for a long time. They're in their prime earning years, in their 40s, and they're struggling to get in the marketplace. And it reaches a point where people just say, you know what, I'm going to wait. So I think there's some more to go, but yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you say? Mate, you do this for a living, Tom. We're just a couple of blokes in a media company. We don't know what we're doing here. This is what you do every given Saturday.
Well, let me tell you, thanks for that. But if people that are on big bucks that are data analysts that work for banks, people that work for data companies, 1.5 years ago said that the market was going to drop 10 to 30%, right? That was the general consensus. Commonwealth Bank was that article in the SMH, that front page. Everyone knows that article. And then a lot of people, Shane Oliver said the same thing. The list goes on, right? CoreLogic, SQM, they were a little bit more conservative, but they all said it was going to drop. But in fact, we've actually had the biggest real estate boom that I can remember since 1987, 88. 87, 88 was prices doubled. They doubled. It's not like that, right? But what did happen is 1989 was the beginning of interest rates hitting 17%, and we had a very tough period afterwards. I don't know, but I can tell you what Alex is talking about. I'm in the same predicament because I have delayed pulling the gun on a bit of property in the last year, and now I'm thinking to myself, how much money am I leaving on the table? Then another side of my brain thinks to itself, hang on a second. You've waited this long. Why wouldn't you wait till this thing starts cooling off, right? So I understand this thing about fear and greed driving the behavior of people. I don't know the answer to that, so I prefer not to answer it, Phil, because I really don't know. But what I would prefer.
First time in your life you haven't got an opinion on something.
Yeah, I know, because I'm conscious. I'm conscious that people that this is actually a permanent record, right? So,
well, it's been a permanent record, Tom. And you were talking about the banks and these very smart economic forecasters coming out 18 months ago talking about 30% drops in the market. If you go back to that point in time when me and you were having these discussions, we weren't saying that.
No, we weren't, and that's why we can actually.
So that's on a permanent record.
That's on a permanent record. We actually did pretty. Mate, I've got to tell you, Phil. I think that during that period last year, that March to June, July period, we weren't far off what was going on. We didn't catastrophize, and I think we were pretty good. But I'll tell you one thing that I'm absolutely adamant about: this COVID clarity. I'm just so clear on it now. People have changed the relationship they have with the property they live in. And the reason why is they spend so much more time in the property, right? They look at things in a house they never go down to. So this thing, COVID clarity, to me, COVID clarity is that you get clear in your head about what home means to you. So what have I noticed about COVID clarity? Number one, People are sick and tired of fighting over the kitchen table. Who's going to have Zoom for the first half of the day? COVID clarity. People are sick and tired of not having a big backyard that they can sit in the sun at the right time of the day. COVID clarity. Some people, COVID's actually taught them they don't want to live in an apartment. Some people have decided, man, they don't want to live in the inner city. They want to go live a little bit further out. Some people, COVID, I've got to tell you, COVID, I have 3 people in my life that said to me, COVID brought their separation forward. Why? Because if you're spending time at home with someone that there's already problems with, they get amplified during a lockdown, right? So one thing I've learned, COVID has brought forward all these issues that were sort of there, but they weren't being confronted, right? Now they're being confronted. And so I do think from a real estate agent's perspective, that's not a bad thing, because we live off turnover in our industry. We want people to actually move, whether they're moving for tree changes, sea changes, upgrading, downgrading, divorce. It's not good, but agents do like those kinds of listings.
Let me tell you something, Tom. One thing that COVID has done to all of us by default has made us, A, become quicker decision makers, and B, accept change really, really, really quickly. One of the terrible impacts of going through lockdown, of suddenly data that we've never had to deal with before, is kind of reprogram the way that we think, the way we behave, the way that we look at where we live, and also our relationships. And I'll just jump back to what you're talking about in terms of the property market. You know, it's changed the way we talk about, the fearless, the fearless approach of buying. What COVID's done has made us make decisions very, very quickly. And this is impacting, I believe, the real estate market. And I'll just give you a bit, I'll just digress for a moment. I've got a house that I've had in Turramurra. I've been there since 2017. It's a 4-bedroom house. It's on a nice block of land. I'm perfectly happy. And I started to go through this very rapid process very recently of going, I want to be on the coast. If you're not familiar with Turramurra's in the North Shore of Sydney. It's probably a 25-minute drive from the beach. Now, I've got a small apartment in Newport, and I spent a little bit of time down there. It's actually rented out as an investment property. But I went through this kind of COVID clarity of going, I don't want to be here. I want to be on the beaches. So I went down this pathway of starting to look at properties in particularly around Newport and Mona Vale. Let me tell you, the properties there that were going for $2, $3, $4 million, even 12 months ago, 18 months ago, $5, $6, $7, $8 million now. And I sort of went through this mindset of, I've got to go, got already rushing through trying to get myself ready to purchase, even though I was perfectly happy at my house before the kind of the lockdown. But there was this realization really quite late on the piece. I went, hang on a minute. If I took the house I'm in now, where I live in Turramurra, and I'm happy in Turramurra, if I tore it up on its block of land and stuck it by the ocean, that would probably be a $9, $10, $11 million property just by the location. So I think that we have gone through, it's changed the way we think. It's changed the way we view the world. It's changed the way we view our own circumstances. And it's changed our own perception of what we should and shouldn't have. And this is what's making buyers move quickly. It's also, driving vendors in terms of their behavior as well. So we've all changed, Tom, and I think we've changed permanently.
So Alex, I want to extend on that. I was talking to an agent, very successful real estate company in London. They do events in London. We've got to keep talking about, Phil, about our London trip. You won't believe it, I've had people inquire about it. I said, what are you talking about? They said, oh, you mentioned it on the show. I forgot all about it. Anyway, so Alex, I was talking to this guy in London, and he said, what has happened is that in London, things have gone crazy. Like, there is the courage of people is incredible. And I said to him, why is that? And he goes, it looks like people realized how fragile life can be. Like, we got through we got through COVID pretty bad, but pretty good, right? But you could have had a virus. Imagine, you could have had a virus that was 10 times deadlier, right? And 20 times more contagious, right? And that there was no vaccine for it. And lots of people just died, right? Right? We saw a glimpse of how fragile life can be. And what's happened as people have come out, they've realized, hey, hang on a second. You've got to this is not a dress rehearsal. There's no point sort of sitting at home dying with your music on the inside, you might as well go and have a crack of it. That's the first thing. The second thing I've noticed is, on a point that you raised, is I've just noticed decisions are made really quickly. I remember 2 years ago, I said to someone, hey, let's just shift that date to Wednesday in 6 weeks' time. He goes, no, we can't do that because, we need to give people notice. But today, Alex, people ring me up, mate, let's do this. When? Next Friday. Book it in. People ring me up, mate, move the auction from Saturday at 10 o'clock, bring it forward to tomorrow. People have learned, hey, of course you can change things. There's people have cut through the red tape bullshit. They've realized if you want something, you can actually do something about it. And I think that is an enabler in forcing people to not have this paralysis by over-analysis and realize you're a decision away from a new direction.
What do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, it should have always been that way. Sometimes you need an inflection point to trigger it. Bureaucracy, overthinking, red tape, it's inherent in our governments. I think the government's learned a little bit from this. We've seen the government transform as a result of COVID-19. We going back to our earlier conversations, Tom, in the first series of this sort of discussion, how quickly the government moved to pump stimulus into the economy to keep jobs safe, JobKeeper sort of 1.0. Who would have thought a government could move that quickly? They've learned from it. The government now is able to do sittings of Parliament over Zoom. They've completely transformed. Whether they're going to go back to how it was, who knows? But everyone now knows is that being adaptive is an enabler. So you don't overthink things. You just still need to be strategic. You need to make informed decisions, but there's so much information out there right now to help you accelerate that decision making. So I think it's a good environment. Speed.
Now I'm gonna now Phil and Alex, if you want to stay on there, I'm going to run through 5 or 6 things that I read recently in one of the financial press, and I thought to myself, this guy might not be far off. This guy might not be far off. I'm going to run through what he said real estate is going to look like after lockdown. The first thing he said is he believes that this was in the Fin Review on Monday. The first thing he said is he believes that rental yields in the inner city will go up again as vaccinations go up, as university students return. They've been smashed badly over the last year and a half, and all of a sudden we're going to see more people seeing good value in the inner city units. That's the first one. The second thing is technology, and it's an interesting one, and I agree with it, even though my head says technology should be the way we're moving, is that he believes that on-site auctions will go back and people won't go to the online version of an auction, and that Zoom inspections will go back to physical inspections, that people will actually go back to touching, smelling and feeling a property. On those 2 issues, what do you think, guys?
I'll have a go at the first one. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Like, of course, yields are going to go up in inner city apartments because they can't go down too much further. Most of the damage has been done. If you think back to the original start of the pandemic, international students all went home. They haven't been allowed in. Therefore, the natural consumers of those apartments weren't there. Yields went down. Number 2, all the young professionals who wanted the inner city life, they wanted to get on the piss and dine out every night. They lost their jobs. They couldn't afford it. They all moved back home with their parents. So therefore, those consumers left. So yields couldn't go down too much further in the inner city apartment market. So obviously, as more people, supply and demand, come back into that market, yields should improve. So I agree with that, but it's pretty obvious would be my point.
What about the online auctions?
Yep.
What about online auctions?
Agree. Yeah, I think people want to go back. You're talking about huge financial decisions. Doing that over the interweb versus doing it in person. I think people will go back to in-person connectivity. I think technology is good for parts of what we do as humans, but the important point there is that we are humans. Humans are they like the connectivity, the touch and feel of each other. No pun intended. And we've spoken about our events business, Tom, how, even though technology is there right now to be able to conduct content sharing through event platforms, people still want to get back into the room and see, touch, network each other. So I agree with both those points.
See, I don't know. I'm gonna throw something else out there. I think there's probably an in between, and I don't know, but I think I'm going to want to visit a property. You know, I don't want to look at something online. I don't like this 15 minutes in, one person at a time. I like open homes. I think open homes are good, and I think, you know, Australian buyers like to go and visit an open home. And you know what? I might want to go one week, and I might want to go back the next week and spend my time and have a look around. In terms of online auctions, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how things go there, Tom. I think some people, you know, like to be there, you know, stood there on the front yard, or, you know, sort of actually at the auction and have that buzz of, you know, the auction, the auctioneer. I'll wait and see, because I think there's probably scope for, I think, whereas you've got to visit a property and touch and feel and smell the place, but do you need to be there when you're actually doing the bidding in an auction? I don't know. So I'll reserve judgment on that. I think there could be a hybrid, and I think that you may see online auctions continuing moving forward. There's a lot of reasons why it makes sense, right? You know,
I think you got to have both. I think we spoke about this last week, Tom, where you're probably still going to have live auctions, but you could probably spread your distribution by having some sort of online connectivity for those people out of the state or international or wherever. So maybe that's the application.
And going back into units, you know, the unit market, you know, always goes, it seems to shift, you know, from oversupply to undersupply to yields are a lot more bouncy in terms of units. And right now, no one really wants to live in a unit for all the reasons you touched on. People want their own block of land, they want space, but things are going to change, you know, as Australia comes to terms with the pandemic, as normalization comes back in, and also with a ridiculously spiraling sort of houses market. There's going to be that point where I go, you know what, and this is from a sort of a purchasing point of view, but as well as from a renting point of view, you're going to go, you know what, I was uncomfortable about a unit 12 months ago, but maybe they're not so bad now. And oh, hang on a second, I can save a load of money by living in a unit. And there's some great units available in every marketplace.
What about regional Australia?
The same article points to regional Australians moving back to the cities, Tom.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you think? And for the record, I have been following the data. I've got to tell you, regional cities, take Byron Bay out, right? Because Byron Bay doesn't represent every other regional part of Australia. Regional areas are not growing at the same rate as metro areas are at the moment. They've slowed a bit, right? They have slowed a bit. So I'm beginning to think to myself that maybe this article is right, because I think the view that you were going to work 5 days away from the office so you could actually live 6 hours away from your address, that's gone. It appears the hybrid version of the workforce is that you probably, some people are saying 3 and 2 days, 4 and 1, 2 and, you know, there's various versions, but it appears that, man, people will go back. And this is what happened in 1919 after the Spanish flu went. People left regional areas and came back. They need to be close to people, infrastructure, where the big employment, where the big salaries are. I don't know. What do you think?
You're right. You're absolutely right. And look, you know, I mean, everyone's different, right? Some people want to live in regional areas because they want to be, you know, in sort of a regional environment. They like the different pace of life that you get there. And for some people, that's always going to be the attraction. I think if you're looking to make a knee-jerk shift in terms of your current sort of environment, and the regional areas might seem to make sense in the short term, but then you realize that, you know, you're lacking infrastructure. You're lacking hospitals. You're also oftentimes, Tom, leaving behind family and friends that have been built up, you know, through many, many years. And there's a big sense of loss. And it is, look, maybe I'm just getting older. I don't know. It's harder to build deeper relationships quickly, you know, and I think you can make this move for economic and for sort of lifestyle reasons, but then you kind of realize that it maybe wasn't the right move. And I think also, you know, it's getting harder to move back though, Tom. You know, if you've moved away to a regional area a couple of years ago, guess what? You try and come back into Sydney now and purchase a property, it's painful.
Well, I'm looking at Jacqueline Watson, who's a very good real estate agent in the Northern Beaches, super agent. Already have people coming back to the city, no work opportunities. I've got to tell you, I sat at a cafe last year in between the two lockdowns that we've had, and I was listening to one guy tell another guy that he'd been there for 3 months. He'd left Victoria. He'd been in Byron for 3 months, and he said something along his wife. He goes, she's already missing her parents. He goes, so what? He goes. I think the words he used is, we judged it on what life was like when we're here December to February. It's actually ended up being quite different being here June to August.
Well, I think for a lot of people who seek a sea and tree change, Tom, they do it on the basis of some experience they might have had over a period of a week or two. What we're seeing here and to this article, I think the honeymoon for a lot of people that do make that shift, it does end. Some people it takes 3 months, some people it takes 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. But it does end, and some of the uniqueness of living in a regional area becomes quite monotonous eventually. Small communities, lack of infrastructure, and to that point around job opportunities, it might be okay if you're for better terms, a white collar worker, and you get the choice to be able to work 3 days at home and 2 days in the office or whatever that mix might be. But the way these regional economies grow and evolve is through job creation. Those people aren't bringing jobs to those areas. They're just employed, or they might be owner-occupied or whatever. So we need to create jobs in these regional locations, which means it needs infrastructure, business infrastructure, and all things associated with it. So the honeymoon for some people can be a great time. For some, it might absolutely break them, to Alex's point. You price yourself out. You think you're selling at a top rate here in Sydney, you take your money, it goes a lot further regionally. When you come back to the big smoke, you're not going to probably replace what you had.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Stephen Thomas. Lots of buyers looking in the Penrith district from the Sydney area at the moment. I know that's a fact. But, gang, look, it's been great catching up with you. All I'm going to say is at the moment, I've got to say that the way things are looking in real estate, we're having a very late spring. I actually think that real estate agents' real big break is going to happen at Easter now. I think that we're going to have a bit of a break between Christmas and New Year's. I don't think everyone's going to come back on the 25th of January after Australia Day. I think people are going to come back before that. I think that there's going to be a lot of real estate agents that are going to be doing a lot of work, particularly the Melbourne agents who, congratulations, by the way, to Melbourne agents. You've been able to put your work clothes back on and start doing buyer inspections in the last 72 hours. Well done to that. Those in Byron Bay, you've now gone into a lockdown as of yesterday, but I believe that your lockdown still allows you to show property. Sydney's been business as usual without the open for inspections. I think we're in right through. Can I ask you guys your view? Christmas parties, the spirit of Christmas parties. Is the city gonna be packed where on that, where December 5 onwards? What's your feeling?
Go on, Phil. It's your remit.
I think it needs to be, mate. You've got a whole bunch of companies just holding on by the skin of their teeth, waiting for that period for, the traditional busy time seasonally, and hospitality, restaurants, holiday-orientated places. That the governments, and that's a plural across all the states, which is championed federally, needs to get Australia open for business as quickly as possible. So my read would be that, at least in New South Wales, I tend to agree that once your 70%, 75, 80, whatever it is, vaccination rate is met, they're going to open the place up. So Christmas parties, yes. We've got our Christmas party. We do an offsite called MCon, where we take the whole team away to an offsite for an overnighter. Mate, we're booked up. We're planning. We're ready to go. We have 30 plus events scheduled, Tom, to happen this side of Christmas in person. The government will open up the state. They're going to need to open it up. And we're very conscious, Tom. If you think about our very small role in supporting economic growth and recovery here in New South Wales, our supply chain, nationally as well, we do events nationally, our supply chain is deep. If you think about it, we use all these big conference and function centres. There's food on the table. There's booze in people's glasses. There's AV companies. There's bands. There's DJs. There's all and sundry. But then there's a small little economy connected with that. It's all the tuxedos and the ball gowns that the girls wear. There's the hair and the makeup. There's the nails. There's There's the hotels getting used. That is business events give, I think,
Phil,
$35 billion to the economy every year, mate.
I got asked a question this morning at the Bay Run Neil Park Cafe, where a guy said to me, he goes, you know these real estate workshops you used to do? I said, yeah. He goes, is there any reason, since the government thinks that it's really, really, really hard to get COVID when you're outdoors and that they actually support outdoors, is there any reason why you wouldn't hold, and he looked at the park, why you wouldn't hold an event with 500 agents out on this grass here? And, I thought about it. I thought, well, I said, I mean, you've got to make sure that you've got the sound that can do that, which I'm sure you could, that would be resolved. I said, you got to sort of make sure that you allow people to, like, you don't want people on the street not paying a ticket if others have paid a ticket. So you're going to have to sort of address that issue. So you could actually go into a ground, Leichhardt Oval, and have it in that Leichhardt Oval. What's your view, guys, as event managers, as people that run big events?
Well, already some of the function spaces and big conference areas are creating outdoor spaces to potentially capitalize on that. If you want to get to the health issues of it all, it's whether or not COVID spreads faster indoors or outdoors. It's sort of to and fro, sort of outside the scope of this chat. But I'd look at it from an environmental point of view. Do you think, Tom, you're better off sitting outside listening to you talk about how to sell real estate more effectively? It's going to make any difference whatsoever? Are people going to be in a better frame of mind out there with the birds chirping and the sun shining and their sunblock on? There's probably a place for it.
Well, everyone's got a relationship with COVID. I think it's going to be hard. Will people want to get some younger people are going to want to pack back into pubs and get sort of up close? But I think for a lot of people, it's going to be just a natural sense. You get over an 18-month period, you build up these sort of senses within your own mind of what's safe. I even find myself now feeling like maybe something's standing too close to me. These are hard things to rationalize, and so when we do come back out of lockdown, I think there's going to be some things that are ingrained into all of us. So, will you feel more comfortable? It's going to be down to the individual. Will you collectively feel more comfortable being outside where there's a bit of fresh air passing through? Do you want to be inside a room? Are we going to see more anxiety from people, going back into enclosed spaces? We work with our events with many of the banks and many of the lending institutions. They're saying they won't get involved in any kind of indoor functions or any sponsorship of events, kind of moving forward for a long time. So time will tell. I'll just chop back in something I was thinking about, Tom. You asked about the selling season and whether agents are going to have a break. And from my sort of anecdotal, sort of fairly outside, sort of experience, agents across the board have had a busy year. Let's put aside how successful agents have been, how much money they've made, how successful they've been for their vendors. Agents have been under the pump, worked absolutely, all the way through the week and then back into it again without a rest. So I kind of instinctively feel that this year, although it's been a good year for many agents in terms of their success, I think it's going to have had a big toll on people in terms of their energy. And I would instinctively think that agents are going to need to recharge. So I think you're probably right that there will be a longer break. People you can't work solidly without respite and still be expected to perform, in a good and in a positive way for yourself and also for your vendors. So yeah, I think there'll probably be a bigger break, Tom.
Yeah, well, I've got to tell you, I probably agree because I'm looking at what my own behaviour is going to be. And I'll just finish on this point. Dale Whitford from Geelong said to me, the biggest learning he got out of COVID is he realised at how much he actually loves the job that he does. And I said, how's that? He said, I got a taste of what life is like, not working, being at home, not being addicted to the deal, not making a contribution, not feeling like you wake up to 5 or 6 things that you can do that you like, that are productive. And I've just decided that I'm going to delay my retirement. And I think what it is, he'd sold his business. And he's gone back and he's working in that business because I think he said Retirement's not cracked out to be what I thought it would be. And I think a lot of people also got a better relationship about their careers during COVID. They began to actually realize it does serve a purpose for their life, that it's not a case of work and grind and hustle, get yourself to a position where you don't have to work and then enjoy. I think a lot of people realize having a lot of time on your hands ain't particularly great if there's no meaning to it. Guys, REB, Real Estate Exposed, good to see you, Phil. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Sorry for crashing your broadcast.
All right, at least there's a bit more better content. This you're trying to replace me, Tom. You're trying to get rid of me. Is that the idea?
No. Well, we'll see what the data says. All righty, guys.
Thank you, time.
See you next week.
See you later.